Hey there, lovely. If you're a driven and highly ambitious woman who has checked all the boxes, followed all the rules, only to realize you don't actually feel fulfilled or you don't feel like you're living your purpose, then you are absolutely in the right place. My name is Melissa Chavis. I'm an intuitive mindset coach, and I am absolutely obsessed with helping you discover your true purpose, that thing you were put here on this earth to do, so that you can live the most fulfilling and abundant life possible. Hey there, beautiful. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. I hope you've had a great start to your December. And also, how is it already December? I feel like this year has just flown by and cannot believe that we are almost in 2025. It's just mind-blowing to me. But anyway, this week I really want to talk about something that has recently kind of come back onto my radar personally. And I think that this may be more prevalent this time of year, just due to the holiday season and everything that comes with it. The concept that I want to talk about is called buffering. And actually, Brooke Castillo from the Life Coach School, I think, is the one who coined the term buffering. You could also call this avoidance behavior or kind of numbing out or zoning out, essentially, kind of creating this buffer between you and some feelings, some emotions, some things that you just don't really want to deal with and don't really want to feel at that moment in time. So it's typically avoidance of what you might consider negative emotions. But depending on your upbringing and the programming that you've got going on in your own brain, there's a chance too that you sometimes might try to avoid even positive emotions. But typically, this is an avoidance of feeling some sort of negative feeling or emotion that you just don't really want to deal with or feel or handle in the moment. Like most things, there's a spectrum here, right? With the extreme end playing out as like an addiction to drugs or alcohol or sex or shopping or something along those lines. And if you're experiencing something sort of on that extreme end of things, I highly recommend talking to a behavioral health practitioner because I am not one. And I am not here to provide assistance on those types of behaviors. I am simply providing information just about my own personal experiences and what I've learned in the last several years of studying life coaching. So everything that I'm providing here today is just strictly for informational purposes only and not meant to kind of treat any sort of extreme behaviors. Okay, so the type of buffering that I want to talk about today is kind of more on the milder end of the spectrum, but still not helpful behavior. So what I'm talking about is basically something that may show up like a desire or drive to, sit and scroll on social media for hours at a time, or sitting on the couch until 1 a.m. binging the latest Netflix show because you're feeling overwhelmed with your life right now, or you're trying to avoid thinking about and feeling the emotions that come along with the fact that your boss yelled at you today. So things like that is what we would call buffering. They're generally behaviors that we do to avoid having to feel our difficult feelings or, like I said, create a little buffer between you and this negative emotion that's out here kind of trying to get in, essentially. And I do feel like this is a very timely topic right now because there can be a lot of negative or challenging emotions that can come up during this time of year, during the holiday season. And That could be because you're spending time with certain people, or maybe you're not getting to spend time with certain people. I know for moms, a huge trigger this time of year is trying to keep up with the extra load of making everything happen for everyone around us and trying to make this, magical experience for our families and for our kids and to get everything right and go to all of the parties and all of the events and all of those extra things that come with the holiday season can be very, very challenging. And it's real easy to get into these avoidance behaviors if we're not being aware of exactly what we're doing. And I think the reason that it's so easy for us to fall into these types of behaviors and to kind of try to avoid feeling difficult feelings is because it's very likely that you were never taught how to actually feel your emotions and experience those negative feelings in your body. You probably heard things like, just stop crying or get over it. It's not that big of a deal anyway when you were growing up. I mean, I know I heard those kinds of things. And this is not to sit here and like bash on our parents for doing anything wrong. It's very likely that they heard those same things growing up too, and that they actually never learned how to deal with their emotions either, and thus never really learned how to deal with your emotions in a productive and helpful way, right? So they're only passing on what they know. However, it can lead to an inability to be able to process and work through and feel your feelings. And so a lot of times we essentially try to create that buffer. We try to separate ourselves from those negative feelings because we're scared of feeling them. We don't really know how to do it properly. And we don't like the way that it feels in our bodies. And so we push away from it. We push it away from us basically by buffering, by doing these behaviors where we get to kind of like numb out and not think about it, not feel it, just sort of, be watching some mindless TV. I know I hear that all the time, like, oh, it's just mindless TV. It's like you can just watch it, get absorbed in whatever you're watching, and not have to be in your own reality in those moments. But if you are someone who's in this place where you are trying to really live your best life and maintain this level of like high vibe energy on a consistent basis, it is critically important to become more emotionally mature. And that means mastering the ability to process your emotions in a healthy way and to be able to move through things and to move on from things, not only for yourself, but also in the relationships that you have with other people in your life. Being emotionally mature moves you forward with your own development as well as in relationships with those around you. The other thing is, the less time you spend doing these buffering behaviors and just feeling and processing your emotions, the more time that magically appears in your day. You'll be surprised by how much more time you have to do things that actually light you up and bring you joy when you don't spend hours mindlessly scrolling social media to try to avoid feeling your feelings. And that's what we're here for, right? Like, that's the whole purpose of everything I talk about is to be able to spend your time, spend your life doing things that are meaningful for you. So when you can spend less time doing the things that are non-productive, unhelpful behaviors, the more time you have to spend doing things that are actually exciting for you and that really you want to be doing. So the first step in working through some of this avoidance, working through some of these buffering behaviors is to start noticing when it's happening. So this requires getting present with yourself enough to recognize that the reason you've watched three Hallmark Christmas movies this week is because you're super stressed about the five holiday parties that you've agreed to attend. So this really starts by asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why do I feel like I want to sit on my couch and not interact with the world around me and just watch a bunch of Hallmark Christmas movies? Or why did I just spend 2 hours mindlessly scrolling on social media? So truly just starting to ask yourself why you're doing some of these things, because my guess is that a lot of times after you've done it, you probably regret doing it because you realize like, oh, that just wasted so much of my time. Like I just wasted 3 hours watching these two movies and now it's 1 a.m. and I'm not going to get enough sleep tonight and I have to wake up in the morning and go and do all my things. And so a lot of times you're probably feeling that regret after having done this. And so if you can start to just get more curious about it and start questioning, like, why am I doing this? Why did I just do this? And, as I've mentioned before here, once you start asking yourself these kinds of questions, you're going to start getting different answers. You're going to start actually being able to dig in here a little bit more and see things maybe that you haven't been able to see before when you weren't getting curious, when you weren't questioning these things. So, as a little example of this in my life, last month, I realized that I had started scrolling social media a lot more than what I typically do. My screen time was up and I was feeling way more stressed out and also kind of beating myself up for it, right? Because it was like, oh, why did I just spend an hour scrolling Instagram? Like, I know I don't have time for that. And why am I doing this? I don't want to be doing this. And so I started getting curious and like wondering, what's going on here for me? Why am I trying to do this? And why is this happening, really? And what I realized was that I was trying to avoid the stress and the chaos that comes with getting everything prepared for Christmas for my family. It takes a lot of time and effort and can be very stressful and kind of overwhelming to start to try to get the list together, to start trying to buy things for all my kids and, other family members and their teachers and all of these gifts that I have to think about every year. And I realized that it was like as the time started getting closer to when I needed to start preparing and start doing those things, I was starting to pull back and go into this little like comfort zone, this little buffer where I could just, not think about any of it, not feel any of that stress or anxiety, and just sit and numb out on social media. So once I was totally honest with myself and I realized that was what was happening, I was able to actually start scheduling these things on my calendar, making sure I had time set aside to start doing these activities. And then I intentionally had conversations with each of my kids individually, asking them, like, just tell me the things that you want for Christmas, or tell me some things that you think your sister might like, or, basically just getting some idea and writing it all down of what my kids actually want for Christmas and to start kind of building out that list and to start doing some of the actual shopping. Once I started getting things a little bit more organized and I started just kind of like facing this and taking on this responsibility, I felt a lot less stressed out about it and I felt a lot less overwhelmed once I was able to break it down a little bit and kind of start working through it bit by bit, which I still am at this point. But once I had a better plan in place and kind of, had some idea of what I did need to get done, it felt a lot less overwhelming and a lot less stressful. And I stopped sitting and scrolling social media and trying to numb out the issue. Isn't always going to be quite that easy or straightforward. Sometimes we just feel sad or we feel disappointed or frustrated with our current life situation. and we're sitting there binging Netflix till 1 a.m. to avoid actually acknowledging and feeling those emotions, that distress that is there for us in our lives. In those cases, it's really important to first just recognize what's happening. Recognize that there's something going on for you, that you are feeling upset about something, that you're feeling frustrated or disappointed about something in your life, and that you've been trying to avoid it. And don't beat yourself up for this because we all do it. Nobody likes to sit in negative emotions. Nobody enjoys it. So we all do these kinds of things from time to time. It's just learning how to recognize that it's happening and then processing and feeling those emotions. So once you know that this is what's happening, once you've recognized it and you've acknowledged it, then it's really important to just sit with those emotions. Allow yourself to feel that sadness. Feel it in your body. Like, how does it feel? One of the things that I think is a really powerful exercise is to actually start kind of like taking note, like listing, like, how does this feeling feel for me? What am I feeling in this moment? And just truly getting so present with it and allowing it to be there. And knowing that feeling your feelings, sitting in these emotions is not dangerous or harmful in any way, as long as you are not, staying there for long periods of time, as long as you are doing this in a way that is productive and just kind of like acknowledging it, feeling it in your body, letting it be there, not resisting it, not pushing back against it. Those types of behaviors, like with if you're resisting it, you're pushing back against it, you're really trying not to feel it. That's typically when the feeling is going to last a lot longer. You're going to have to kind of keep fighting it for a much longer period of time than if you just allow it and acknowledge it and just say, like, I'm really, really sad right now and I'm crying. And this is how this feels. And I'm letting myself feel this for this period of time. And, that period of time is going to be different for everyone, right? So there are times when I feel sad about something and I just let myself feel sad. And it's literally like 5 minutes of sadness, of crying. And then it's like, okay, I don't feel that in my body anymore. I don't feel the sadness. And I'm able to then move on and move forward from it at that point. But it's going to be different for everyone. So it just depends on what's going on and how well you're able to actually process it and sit with it and be with it and allow it to kind of move through you. So the process is incredibly simple and straightforward, but it is uncomfortable and it can be really, really challenging to sit in your emotions and to really feel those feelings in your body. And so that's why so many of us try to avoid it all the time. But once you get more into the practice of doing this, once you start acknowledging that this is happening for you and you start processing and feeling your emotions instead, it does get so much easier and so much more natural. And you will catch yourself in these behaviors much less frequently, which, of course, is what leads to that elevated level of emotional maturity that is required to truly live your best life and to spend more time in high vibration, to spend more time at this elevated level of joy and excitement in your life. And I do feel like I need to add here that I'm not saying you can't ever watch a Hallmark Christmas movie, because if you do, then you're buffering. Or you can't ever look at social media, because if you do, then you're obviously buffering. No, that is absolutely not the case. If watching a Hallmark Christmas movie brings you joy and just makes you feel good and warm and fuzzy for a little bit, by all means, do that, please. Like, do the things that make you happy and that bring you joy. Or if looking at social media and seeing what's going on with your friends and the people you follow makes you feel happy, it makes you feel joyful, then by all means, like, keep doing that. What I'm saying is just know what is behind it. Know and understand and acknowledge why you're doing these things. If you're doing it because it brings you joy and it feels good for you, then do it. But if you're doing it because you're trying to avoid something else in your life and you're trying to numb out and you're trying to kind of move away from these negative feelings that are trying to creep in for you, then those are the types of situations that I'm talking about. Those are the types of unhelpful behavior that is not going to help you move through things and process things and move on in your life. So I do want to mention that distinction there because I'm absolutely not saying that if you watch Netflix, then you're buffering. I don't believe that at all. What I'm saying is that I think it's important to be able to tell the difference, to recognize that, and to acknowledge it and then proceed accordingly. All right. Well, that is all I have for today. Hopefully, this episode was helpful for you and you'll have more awareness around this concept and the concept of buffering as we move through this potentially challenging time of year. And I would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out to me with any questions or feedback that you might have on this episode or any of my other episodes. You can always reach me on Instagram. That is at Melissa Ann Chavis. Or you can just leave a comment here beneath this episode, wherever you're watching or listening. I absolutely would love to hear from you. Until next time, my friend, I hope you have a great week. That's it for another episode of the Authentic Awakening podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you found it helpful, I'd love to hear from you. You can do that by liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel or rating and reviewing the podcast wherever you're listening.